Welcome back to the third video in a three-part series on iHuman. This video is titled iHuman Expectations and Grading. The learning objectives for this video include: know the session level objectives for iHuman, know how your performance will be assessed for iHuman, and be prepared for success with iHuman by understanding the expectations. The iHuman module session level objectives include: perform and interpret a relevant problem-focused history and physical exam in a simulated patient, and document a complete history and physical note representing an accurate, organized, and appropriately focused account of the student-patient interaction in the patient record. Further, formulate and justify a prioritized problem list and differential diagnosis in a simulated patient, and apply medical knowledge to guide collection of history and physical, recognize clinical presentations, develop a prioritized problem list and differential diagnosis, and provide a plan of care for further diagnostic and therapeutic management. This slide demonstrates the overall structure of our iHuman use, and in particular demonstrates how the calendar of the rotation will correspond to your case play. This is specific to internal medicine, but in general, the family medicine and pediatric rotations will follow a similar structure. Case 1 will be available to you in the first 5 days of the rotation and is a practice case. After you have completed this practice case, you will want to review the case key available on Canvas. The case keys show how to ask questions that you need to ask and why you should ask those questions. For case 2, you'll have until the 10th day of the rotation to complete this case. This case is also a practice case. And new this year, you'll have the opportunity to both review a case key similar to the first practice case, and compare your own performance to the case key. And if you'd like, you have the option of obtaining individual feedback from the course director or course co-director on your performance on this second case. The initial feedback will be by email, but if you would like additional face-to-face feedback after you've received the emailed feedback, we can certainly arrange that. In order to obtain this optional emailed individual feedback, you'll need to email Sandy Laughlin for the internal medicine sub-I by the 10th day of the rotation in order to sign up. You will then have until the last day of the rotation to complete the third case, which is the graded case. Your overall grade on the course will be affected by this third case alone. From this case, you'll receive case feedback through comments that will be in the formative section of your grade, and you'll receive rhyme level feedback in the summative section of your grade. In other words, the summative section will state what rhyme level you achieved on this iHuman simulation. It's very important to note that the family medicine and pediatric sub-Is will have a similar, but likely slightly different structure for the cases, as well as structure for the feedback. Please refer to your course leadership for details. As far as our assessment of your iHuman performance, we will assess you based on your written H&P to assign a rhyme level of performance using the rubric that I will show you in a second, which is also available in the syllabus. The rubric is based on the rhyme framework, and it's been modified for use with iHuman from the rhyme developers' original H&P grading rubric. That's Lou Pangaro and his research group. For a detailed review of the evidence supporting our use of a rhyme-based rubric to assess your iHuman performance using your written H&P, please view the separate supplemental video, Evidence Supporting iHuman H&P Assessment, on YouTube, and available via a link on your Canvas site. This is the iHuman rubric. We'll go through it step by step. This is also available in your syllabus. At the top, you'll notice that there's a statement, overall case scored at lowest rhyme level achieved in all sections. This is no different than rhyme levels in clinical performance, and that if you score in the interpreter or interpreter manager section for every section except, let's say, the review of systems section, you score at the inconsistent reporter level. In that case, your overall performance is rated at the lowest rhyme level in any section, which in this case would be at the inconsistent reported level due to the performance on the review of systems. So you will be scored at the lowest rhyme level achieved in all sections. On this line, you see your chief complaint and history of present illness, and you can see that there are anchors to describe the work in your H&P, from incomplete, absent, or inaccurate, no pertinent negatives or positive, disorganized, incomplete descriptions of symptoms and complaints, which would be an inconsistent reporter level of performance, all the way up to manager. Exceptional, paints a picture appropriately detailed with precise description, reflects thorough understanding of disease process and patient context. You then have your past medical and surgical history, allergies and medications, and past social and family histories. You have your review of systems, and you have your physical exam section. Further, going through the rubric, here you can see there's a section for the problem list and a separate section for the differential diagnosis and defense, and finally a section for your plan. All of these scored on the rhyme scale individually, and your lowest rhyme level performance in all sections will be your overall score for the case. iHuman will be graded on the rhyme scale, as I mentioned, and you'll receive a numeric score based on the rhyme level of achievement. The overall expectations of the iHuman module are here. Use the iHuman rubric to understand the expectations for each section. I will go through these in a little bit more detail in a moment. A key expectation is that you collect your history, collect your past histories, your review systems, your exam, and as you turn up new information in those sections or in the lab sections, that you go back and ask additional questions to get at pertinent positives and negatives and further evaluate the patient for the differential diagnoses that you're considering in your mind. Thus, the expectation that you go back and go back and go back and gather more information. You shouldn't treat this as a one-off, ask the patient some questions, take a history and physical, get some labs, and then move forward. Just like in real life, once you get new information, you have to ask more questions, do additional physical examinations, order more tests, and this system allows you to do that. Some typically collected information is not yet available in iHuman. For instance, medication dose and frequency is not always available. Descriptive information for allergies, as far as what the reaction is not available. And some of the dates, or whether a patient had a left heart cath that specifically resulted in a stent to a particular vessel, That level of information is not available in a human. Now let's talk more about the specific sections. In the history section, the expectation is that you fully develop each finding and presenting symptom. This not only includes characterizing the symptom itself, but collecting information on pertinent positives and negatives. You should document everything you feel is pertinent in your H&P. Just as in reality, if you didn't document it, you didn't do it. Don't forget to go back to ask more questions after you find out new information. A newly discovered elevated creatinine should trigger more questions. Your history should be hypothesis-driven in its content. In other words, if you're seeing a patient that presents with confusion and fever, and you find out later that the patient has an elevated creatinine on lab testing, you should return to the beginning of the case and ask further questions regarding that elevated creatinine, such as, have you been using nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories? Have you had decreased urine output? Have you had pain when you urinate? These questions get at pertinent positives and negatives related to the presenting symptoms and the newly found information about the creatinine. These all are driven towards a hypothesis of the differential diagnosis of this presentation. Use the practice cases to improve your questioning and data collection. These cases have H&P keys on Canvas, as I mentioned previously, that you can use to compare your own performance to that of your course leadership and consider what you would do differently on the subsequent cases. In the past history section, include pertinent dates and details when they're available, and rank the past medical histories in order of importance. If a patient is on a medication, they should have a diagnosis for that medication in the past medical history. Medication should include over-the-counter medications. And do not enter none or non-contributory for the family history. If everyone in the family is healthy, that is still contributory to your overall history and physical. In the review of systems, this section should document pertinent positives and negatives not found in your HPI. If your HPI focuses on a cardiovascular problem, just because your HPI includes such information, you should still consider what questions in the system of cardiovascular you should ask that you might not have asked in your HPI. At a minimum, you should include at least 2 findings from each of 10 systems. Your exam should be a detailed and complete head-to-toe physical exam. It should complement the HPI and histories with regard to specific pertinent positives and negative findings. If you receive more information in the lab testing or diagnostic testing section, you should go back to your exam, as well as your history, and complete further additional exams to document pertinent findings based on that new information. In the assessment plan, you should provide a problem list, which should be bulleted and prioritized by clinical importance. It's okay to group problems into a syndrome if applicable, but you should still list all the problems in some fashion. For instance, if you have a patient with leukemia, and this patient has pancytopenia, you're welcome to leave pancytopenia under the leukemia problem, but you still need to show that this problem is present, even though you're grouping it into a syndrome. The other way to handle this is to include leukemia, and then on the second line as problem 2, you could include pancytopenia. For the differential diagnoses, to score at the highest level, you should include 3 to 5 of the top diagnoses for each active problem. For the plan, to score at the highest level, you should provide a plan for both active and chronic problems. and plans should be comprehensive diagnostic and treatment plans for the active problems. A few frequently asked questions. I didn't get to all of the cases in time before they closed. Can you reopen the cases? Turning in assignments on time is a professionalism competency, and the cases will not be reopened if you fail to get to them on time, with the exception of extenuating circumstances. I didn't get the correct diagnosis. Will this hurt my score? No. The key to iHuman is showing your clinical reasoning skills and H&P skills in the development of a prioritized problem list with differential diagnoses for the active problems. Your differential should certainly consider the correct diagnosis, but just as in life and in patient care, we don't always identify the correct diagnosis up front, but our testing and our differential, if it's wide enough, we will eventually come to the correct diagnosis. Is the practice case graded? The answer is no. Both the practice cases, case 1 and case 2, will not be graded. Again, you will have the opportunity, if you wish, to receive feedback in an email format on the second case from course leadership. If you would like, thereafter, we can also arrange for face-to-face phone or Zoom further feedback based on what the content of the feedback was in the email. That is the end of this presentation on expectations and grading in iHuman. Appreciate your attention, and please let us know if you have any questions.